All right, y'all, part two. Welcome back to my channel. So I left off with, I'll just say the family fight. So my dad comes from like way across town. It probably took him almost an hour to get to where I was. So he comes and he gets me and, um, I pack up my stuff and even at that time, my husband was like, I'm sorry. And he's trying to kiss me and hold my hand. And he had given me this little ugly ring that was supposed to be my wedding ring. I'm sorry, y'all. He had given me this little ugly ring. And me, I wore that ring proudly, but it was the ugliest thing ever. So he had taken the ring from me uh, when we were in the house. So he's trying to give me the ring back and trying to hold my hand or whatever. And I'm looking at the ring like, I don't want this ugly thing. So eventually me and my dad, we leave and he takes me back to their house. And when I get to their house, he's still trying to call me like, I'm sorry. And my parents are like, get off the phone. Now, mind you, I'm 18, so I am, in my eyes, grown, but they're telling me to get off their phone. He's not allowed to call their phone, this, that, and the other. So I get settled into my parents' house. And, you know, during this time, I'm still trying to work because I had gotten another job at a elementary school. I was an aide in the classroom. I was a teacher's aide. So I'm trying to still work that job. Now, mind you, where my parents lived, there was no bus that was anywhere near their home. So I didn't have a car. So eventually I had to let that job go because I didn't have the transportation. And during that time, I had put my baby in daycare, and she was the type of child that she didn't want to be away from me. She was, really into family. So it was my dad, his parents, or, some other family member that kept her. So she wasn't used to being in other people's care. So I had found her at a daycare and I dropped her off this one day and I got to work. I'm sorry, y'all. I got to work and my dad called me and he was like, okay, you're going to have to come home. And I'm like, why? It took me like forever to get to work, like maybe an hour. And I was like, why? What happened? He was like, I had to go pick up your baby because she bit the daycare lady. And I was like, what? And so the daycare lady called my dad in and was like, you got to come get this child. She cannot be here. She done bit me and no, I'm not gonna. Lady was crying and whatnot. So I had to quit that job because because my baby was a terror. So anyway, it's not funny, but it is funny. So anyway, I'm just living life at their house. I, at this point, knew that I didn't want that relationship, so I applied for assistance and housing. Ooh, excuse me. So after about a couple months, I get the notice that I am, the stuff that I applied for, I was approved for. So I started to get excited. During this time, I was like really sad and I would cry. And my parents would be like, what's wrong with you? And I was like, oh, I just want my own place, for me and my baby. And they're like, it'll happen. Just, be patient. It'll happen. So when it happened, I was like thrilled. So me and my baby would move into our own place and we're doing good. And he doesn't know where we live because at this time it was about people making sure that I was safe. So when I moved, nobody, like, people had the phone number, but nobody had the address. If he called, Nobody knew where I was, things like that. So me and my baby will move into our own place, and I'm happy and just excited to have my own place. So, life goes on. She is about a year old at this point. So we're, living happily. So I enroll in school and I put her in another daycare. So I'm going to school. And so this particular morning, I drop her off at daycare and I go to school. And, hours later, I go back to pick her up. Well, during this time, like I said, I really didn't have contact with him. And people were trying to keep me safe by not letting anybody know where I was or where my baby was going to daycare at. So this afternoon, I pull up to the daycare, and this is an L-shaped square. And in the corner was a post office, but it was like really dark back there. You couldn't see. If somebody was hiding back there, you wouldn't be able to see them. So I stop and I get out of my car and I head to the daycare. Well, he comes running out of this corner, knife in hand, big butcher knife in hand. I barely make it into the daycare. I'm screaming, like, help me, help me, help me. The people in the daycare, well, there's children in there. So they lock the door and I hide in this cubby hole, me and my baby. Well, during this time, he's like stabbing my windshield, just stabbing. My windshield breaks. There's glass all in my car, outside of my car. They call the police and I think he gets arrested. And so I think that ordeal happened. I think I went to go pick her up about 3 and I didn't get done till like about 5. So I had to drive home with glass all in my seat and just terrified. Like, I was so scared. Y'all just don't know. You see some person, it was like really out of a movie. So I make it home and I call my parents and I'm like, he came out of nowhere and he stabbed up my windshield. So, eventually they got my windshield fixed for me. But also, I think during that time, the daycare center called me and was like, you can't bring your baby back here. That's too much drama for a place like this with all these children around. So you'll just have to take your baby elsewhere. So I was like, okay. So I had to stop the class that I was doing and I was just at home with my baby. Still him not knowing where I lived. So, we were just living life still. So, during the time that I lived apart from him, he was stalking me. That's how he found out where my baby went to daycare at. He would follow me and I didn't know. He knew what car I drove. I had a car by then. I had bought the car myself. It was tax time when I bought it, so I bought it outright. So he knew what my car looked like. And eventually he found out where I lived. So it was one day I was at home and somebody knocks on the door and I go to answer my door and he's standing in front of me. I closed that door so fast and locked it, and I went to get my baby because she was standing somewhere in the apartment, and I went to go pick her up and I hear boom. So he had kicked in the door. I had a latching lock on my door, and he kicked it open. The wood frame kind of fell apart. So he kidnapped me. Now, I didn't know he was staying anywhere near me. Where I stayed at, there was a group of apartments like really right across the street. Like if I went out my apartment entryway, I would be at the other apartments. So I didn't know he was staying over there. That's where I guess that's how he found out what my car looked like, what daycare my baby was going to. And yeah, so he kidnapped me and he took me over to these apartments. Meanwhile, I guess somebody outside saw what happened and they called the police. So he held me over there for like an hour, and finally I think during this time my mom called the police because she was trying to call me and I wasn't answering the phone. So she knew something was wrong. So she called the police. So as the police got to my house, we drive up in my car and the police like take out their guns and everything. Put your hands up, all that. Like, so I step out the car. I have my baby, and so I'm holding her, but I got one hand up. He's got his hands up, and they're asking me what my name is, and I'm telling them, and they're like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yes, I just want to go in the house, and I just want to go in my house and just take my baby with me." So they're like, "Ma'am, we need to ask you some questions." So we're just standing outside. I think my mom gets there just to make sure everything is okay with me. So during this time, he has my car keys and my house keys in his hand. And I said, I just want to go inside my house and take my baby and, be done with this. So he's holding my keys and I'm like, but I need my keys first. And the dad is like, "These are my keys." And I'm like, "No, those are not your keys. Those keys go to my house and my car." So the police take the keys from him and he asked me, he was like, "Man, what kind of car do you drive?" And I told him what kind of car it was. And then they asked him a question and he couldn't answer the question. So they're like, "Man, we're just going to give you your keys. You go back in your house." And they arrested him. So then he left me alone for a little while. So then he started calling me back. And during this time, I kind of started another relationship. And I was telling the guy that I was talking to, I'm like, "Look, you might not want to be involved with me. I have a crazy person who will not leave me alone. And I just don't want nothing to happen." But the guy was like, "It's cool. I'll be all right. I just want to be with you." And I'm like, "Okay." So after that whole deal ooh, Lord have mercy. After the whole ordeal happened with the police, my friend had gotten off work and he came to my house and he walked into the house and he was like, "What happened here?" And I was like, "He kidnapped me and took me across the way." And he like started asking me all these questions. "Why'd you let him do that to you?" And this, that, and the other. And not like, "Am I okay?" But I wouldn't have let that happen to me. This, that, and the other. So he had a friend with him and his friend was like, "Man, calm down. She's upset. Let her breathe. Leave her alone and you calm down and y'all can talk about it later." So my friend was like, "Yeah, you're right. We'll just talk about this later." So that happens and life goes on. It's me and my baby. I get involved with this other dude, which is a story in itself. I get involved with this other dude. I guess during this time, I'll say ex, he maybe went to jail for some months and I guess he had become homeless. Well, he had called me one day and he happened to be at a motel right down the street from my house. And he's like, "Oh, I really want to see my daughter. Can you bring her down here so that I can visit with her, maybe take her to lunch. And me, I'm the type of person, I can forgive you for whatever. I will never forget, but we can get past stuff. I'm a nice person. I just have that demeanor about me. So I said, okay, I'll bring her down and, you can take her to lunch or whatever. So I took her right down the street, like minutes from my house to this hotel. So we get there and he's like, come on in. And I'm like, well, I can't stay very long because my parents are going to take us out to eat or whatever. So he's like, okay, well, just come in. We don't have to go to lunch. Just come in and sit down, whatever. So I walk in. This is a seedy motel. Like, the carpet is nasty. There's this popcorn bedspread on the bed. Like, he's like, sit down and get comfortable. But like I said, the floor is like, I wouldn't even take off my shoes, like, just nasty. So I'm sitting at the edge of the bed. He takes off his shoes and he lays in the bed. So I'm sitting at the end of the bed and he's trying to pull me back, like, come lay up here with me. And I'm like, no, I'm okay, I'm fine. So we're talking for maybe 5 or 10 minutes and he's like, come sit up here with me so we can watch TV. And I'm like, no, I'm fine, whatever. So then he pulls I'm like, I got to get ready to go. So he pulls the bedspread back or whatever. And I'm thinking, what you about to do? So, he gets up and he takes my keys and I think he puts them down his pants or whatever. And at this point, I'm like mad. I'm like, okay, you can keep my keys because I'm not about to go down there to get my keys. No. So he goes, well, if you give me some, I'll let you go home. And I'm like, and at this point, I'm crying. First of all, you done took my keys and put them down your nasty crotch. And second of all, you're asking me to have intimate relations with you. I'm crying. I don't want to. And he's like pressuring me. Well, at this point, he takes off his shoes. I'm like, what is that smell? And he was like, oh, I've had these shoes a long time. They probably don't smell so good. And I'm like, I got mad about that. And then he wanted to put his foot on me. So I am really like ready to fight because first of all, I have a thing about feet. Like, you cannot put your feet on me. Like, you can be a baby up until you start walking because, we like to smell babies' feet and whatever. So when you get to the age of where you're walking, your feet are, they develop a smell or can develop a smell, and that's the end of that. So he put his funky foot on me, and y'all, I lost it. I'm crying. I'm ready to fight. So I just tell myself, get it over with so that you can go home. So we finish, and he reaches into, he had taken the keys out of his pants by then. So he reaches to the table and he gives me back my keys. And I go into the bathroom and I wet a towel and I start wiping my keys off. And he was like, what? You think I got some disease or whatever? And I'm like, I don't care what you got. I just, want my keys and I want to go home. So he's like, well, are you coming back when you get done with your parents? And I was like, I'll think about it. But right now I need to get home because they're going to call me at a certain time. And if I'm not home to answer the phone, they're going to call the police. So he's like, yeah, you're right. You go on home. So like I said, from where the motel was to where I lived was like a 2-minute drive. So I drive out of the motel and I take the first street and I drive down that street and I drive up to a grocery store that's about 10 minutes away. And so I drive to the grocery store and I circle around the parking lot and I sit there for 10 minutes because I didn't want him to know that I went straight home. So, yeah. So I get home and everything, and I'm like, I'm not going to answer my phone because he already started calling. So I didn't answer the phone for the rest of the night. So I'm going to end this part of the video here, and I will come back with the conclusion. All right, see y'all. Bye.